Welcome to Top Line, the podcast for the best founders, operators, and investors in B2B tech. Every week, AJ Bruno, Asad Zaman, and me, Sam Jacobs, will break down what's important for you to know to be the most well-informed professionals in the market.
This episode is brought to you by Attio, the AI-native CRM built for the next era of companies. Connect your email, and Attio instantly builds your CRM right before your eyes with every company, every contact, and every interaction you've ever had, enriched and organized. With Attio, you can build AI-powered automations and use its research agents to tackle complex operational processes like finding key decision makers and triaging incoming leads. Join industry leaders like Flatfile, Replicate, Modal, and more. Just head to attio.com/topline and you'll get 15% off your first year. That's attio.com/topline for 15% off your first year. Now back to the show.
Hi, everybody. Top Line 109. Just the three of us. It's me, Sam Jacobs. It's Asad Zaman. It's AJ Bruno. We're not joined by any guests. We're excited. It has been a while, and we're excited to be here, just the three of us, to speak poorly about all of our previous guests and sort of talk about them.
We're really good at that. Really good at that.
We had some really good guests, actually. I really enjoyed the ClickUp episode. He was great.
I was just listening to the Guy Rubin episode from last week, Asad, and you are very combative, I have to say.
I deeply disagreed with the view, though. Like, I stand by that. I think I don't understand. I think people think the game is much easier than it is. I don't think there would be some huge shift in everything if we just got a little bit better at pipeline management and putting the right gates in Salesforce, etc. I think the trends are much more powerful than that. And so you could do all these things well. And I still think quota attainment goes down and rep productivity goes down because go-to-market is just going to get harder and harder. And I believe it. So then I fight it.
I appreciate that. You're a man of beliefs, but you're willing to change them. You change your mind when presented with new information.
Sam, didn't you just text us and said that's like the secret? Oh, no, it's Chamath's tweet.
I said that Chamath said that, and I said sometimes he says smart things. He's a smart guy.
Yeah, broken clocks, my friend.
But he is legitimately quite smart. There's this interesting thing that happens to people when they have this cause that is really important to them. Like, these guys are really into being political these days, and you can see them say some silly things, but that doesn't change the fact that he's undeniable. He built the growth engine for Facebook. He's built a great firm in social capital. Like, he's undeniable.
Yeah, well, the tweet we're talking about for all our listeners out there is, and I'm paraphrasing, but Chamath said, the greatest human ability is to be able to change your mind, or the greatest human blah, blah, blah trait of human that he has found that the best business people in the world are able to change their mind. And to that, I say, yeah, you follow the money and you change your mind real quick. So, I mean, he has.
Fair enough. Okay. Wise words.
I'm going to combat a move. I had a talk with seventh graders. My sixth graders, middle school, had a business career day. And I went in and spoke to a bunch of seventh graders. And boy, let me tell you, they are so fired up about entrepreneurship and CEO.
Really?
Being a CEO. No, not at all. Seventh graders really, it's a tough age. But they did ask
are they allowed to have their phones while you're like, no. Do they have their phones?
No, but they ask a lot about AI. And I asked how they used AI. And this one girl said, oh, I used AI to complete my Spanish homework this morning. And I was like, well, that's called cheating. So
is it though?
Is using a calculator cheating?
Exactly.
No,
I was just
here's what I said. I was like, similar to anything you do in life, foundationally, it's perfect. And I told them this. So like, you all don't remember before internet, after internet. I remember before internet, after internet. You all will remember before AI and after AI. That will be a point in time in your lives. You're like, oh yeah, I remember the days before we had this little AI thing.
But why does that matter in terms of using it or not? Like, if you look at some of the biggest geniuses we've had in history, there's this one commonality amongst them, that most of them had one-to-one tutorship at some point in their developmental years. And so that's the best way to learn, is if you can have one-on-one. Second best is small classes. And then from there, it's like these large classes where obviously the quality of learning goes down. This is the first time in history where we've had the probability of a large subset of these kids to get some form of one-on-one tutoring in the form of these AI tools. So I think the kids of the future that'll do well are the ones that are using it to do their Spanish homework and this thing and that thing, because that's what the real world would be like. Here's a tool, use it to get stuff done.
Yeah, but here's what so one kid did ask. I just straight up asked, will AI take over the world, take over human beings? And my answer to that was, no, I don't think so. And here's why. AI is a collection of all of the human data that's already been created. It is consensus thinking and group thinking. And I would be shocked and surprised if AI itself has true innovation and true thought. Individuals, people have true innovation and true thought and drive that home. AI by itself does not.
Cool.
My experience is that blanket statements like that are almost always wrong.
Sam came in and he's
That's
like, you know what? I'm just going to be combative with whatever AJ says today.
Sounds like this
And
combative thing.
you're an idiot. Like, why would you make some dumb declaration
about the Turing test? It's like, I don't know what thought is. None of us know the answers to any of these questions. It's probably true that in some definition, AI will take over the world. And in another definition, we will convince ourselves that we're still sitting in the cockpit.
We're in control.
Yeah.
I got this, guys. I'm doing this. This is me.
Meanwhile, it's like one of those shopping carts where you have kids in them and it's like that little place steering wheel and like, yeah, exactly. Look, I got it. I'm driving.
I will agree with you, AJ, that I think people do forget that it is ChatGPT is in some ways a Google search. It's just a synthesized Google search. It is an aggregation of all of the ideas that were scraped on blog articles and Reddit and Facebook and all kinds of places where maybe they were allowed to get the content, maybe they weren't. But it is the average, and the purpose of the model is predicting the next right word, which by definition will be the average word, which is why the writing is so. It's sort of like pithy, but without substance or depth, you know. And that's
well. This does touch upon a topic that we're going to discuss with Mark Andreessen, but I won't jump the gun. That's not my role to play, but it does hit on the.
Listening to Mark Andreessen talk makes my tush twitch
in a good way.
Not in a good way. Yeah. Well, anyway, how are you, Sam?
I'm pretty good. Yeah, pretty good. I don't know what's new. I've got a personal trainer who's specifically focused on running, and he's having me work out small muscles. He says everybody works out big muscles, but small muscles are where you make the gains. He's talking about core, and he's talking about like glutes and hips. And my God, there's a reason my ass was getting smaller every year. My ass is weak. And I need to, like, specifically my butt muscles. And I am working out muscles that are just, they're like very simple and straightforward. And it's actually quite hard, like standing on one leg for 2 minutes.
Oof,
and then
that's really hard.
Yeah. It's just basic stuff, and keeping your knee raised and feeling like the strain and be like, this should be easy. I do this motion all the time. Yeah, but you don't practice it. So that's how I'm doing. And I'm ready to talk about GTM and provide market commentary. Whatever Asad tells us, and I'm going to create some viral moments.
Let's go.
I'm in it.
Viral moments. There we go.
Versions. We're not talking about what happened last week.
It's just a montage of Sam saying, "That's a stupid statement, AJ." That's
coming in ready to be spicy.
I say it smarter than that because I say it very slowly and deliberately. I say, in my experience, anybody that says that is wrong.
And I talk at 2x, so anything I get just doesn't get captured. It just goes right through the AI filter. And like, I don't know. There's a hodgepodge of words you said there.
Okay, let's jump in, guys.
Let's get there.
So let's start with the pulse. Interestingly, the last time we got together was right after the tariffs were announced and the markets were falling apart. And then we had a bunch of guests. And so we're back now. And so the place to start would be a pulse check. There's how do you feel about the market environment, whatever you want to call it, based on any news you've consumed that you think is relevant and important and is informing your view of things, your own business and the signals you're getting from it, as well as any of the conversations you've had? How are you viewing everything based on these three things? Sam, let's start with you.
I'm more positive than I was. I am grateful that Trump and China came to this agreement, and or the U.S. and China, and I feel like, so I read in the Wall Street Journal, it gives confidence that the adults are back in the room. Was it necessary to go through all of this over the last month and a half, 2 months? No, it was stupid and unnecessary. And there's still a lot of people that are concerned that it's still the essence, the core of all of this is uncertainty and unpredictability. And that this doesn't really help. This is just one random positive news signal, and maybe there'll be other negative news signals. So, but I'm feeling more optimistic, and I'm feeling like this was the point of a pro-business administration. I think there's been some real damage done, though. I will say that I was in our ELT just now talking about our conference in the fall, GTM 2025. It's going to be in Washington, D.C. And we want to do them on the East Coast from now on, so that our European members can come and our Asian members can come, and they get big discounts. The Europeans get 50% off, and anybody in Asia gets 75% off, so that they feel like they are welcome, like we want them to come. Mm-hmm. And a number of people on the executive team, including one of the guys that's based in London, was saying he can't think of a single European that wants to travel to the U.S. right now. They are very afraid of coming here, even as tourists. They're not sure what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And I said, that sounds highly anecdotal, but
it's a thing.
Yeah, it's a thing.
Sherry and I were talking, and I want to go attend Age's coming of age, and she's like, listen, I'm from a Persian background. I was a refugee in Canada. There are a lot of stories right now of a person could be just picked up and sent back to Iran. Like, there's this I don't know how rational it is. Like, I don't know if it's happened. I don't know if it will happen. But that thought is there enough so where she's not traveling to the US, and that's within my house.
Yeah. Just for the record, I am not having a bat mitzvah. I am turning 40.
Oh my God. That. I wish you were having a bat mitzvah.
We should do it for him.
And I hear those stories, they're anecdotal, from Sam, from you, Asad, and it just makes me sad and frustrated. Like, regardless of the administration, it's just the US has always been about like freedom and these opportunities to come, and it's a huge country, and so it just is super disappointing to hear that, regardless of the situation. But on the flip side, in terms of how I'm feeling, I shared with both of you a message that an advisor from a really big scale GTM company had shared like 2 months ago when the tariffs were announced, or a month ago, whatever. Do you all remember it? It was like just saying like how, Walmart was going to close and it's no longer closing, and like they have all these companies that are just pushing and punting and freaking out. Well, I talked to him yesterday, very, very positive on the demand side. They hit bookings numbers. However, he did tell me that because of all of that, they're PE owned, and their PE made them cut hard in February.
Interesting.
And they cut super deep. He said too deep, and ultimately they got rid of a lot of CS folks, and they're now having a huge churn issue, because these relationships that were just very much undervalued from a CS rep to the company, to these enterprises, has just been a challenge. And their books went from a year ago, like $2.5 million per rep, to up to $7 million per rep, all in the name of efficiency and automation, but that it's ultimately really, really cutting into their business from a retention standpoint. So I thought that was interesting.
That is interesting. So, all right, what's your outlook for QuotaPath? How are you feeling, AJ? Great, amazing. On a scale of 1 to 10.
A solid 6.2. I think that's,
and you are a rounder upper, so that's a 4 or a 5.
That's a 4.9.
I'll be honest. I think it's interesting. They had some conversations with the board and some advisors, and I continue to be optimistic about the business. But I do think it's interesting, and I've talked about our Q1 challenges of how much the macro and Q1, and we're on track, on pace to hit this quarter. How much missing a quarter affects the mentality of everyone that is supporters of the business, and how frustrating and lonely it can be as a founder operator to constantly being told, and what you hear, it might not be what exactly is said, but you basically hear you suck. And when you hear that over and over again, it definitely drains on your mentality. It's why there was a great Pavilion CEO session yesterday, Sam, with Jonathan,
John
founder,
Sherry.
founder of CB Insights. He had such great takeaways, but one of this was around coaches and just making sure you surround yourself with people that can like help in that way. I think a good management team can help in this way too, and I've relying on them. But just in general, it's tough when you feel like there isn't alignment across the top level of your business on the management team, but just in general and from a strategy standpoint. And so it's more of a day-to-day thing. I think we'll get in a good spot, a really great spot very soon. And I just will continue to say that I do have really great investors and board members who are all on the same page from an outcome standpoint. But, when you become a business, a real business, a Series B, you have different motivations, and you have to be able to handle those with certainty. So I'm dealing with that right now.
I will say that I don't want to adjust the docket, but this has been on my mind, AJ. I've had a couple different conversations with, and not in the quota path situation, because you guys are doing well. It's just you're not doing, maybe, that one quarter didn't meet certain people's expectations or whatever. But it's quite rough out there for certain people. And I was talking to a good friend who's a founder this past weekend, who was saying, we were just talking about how you employ all these practices, meditation and physical fitness and getting good sleep and eating right and having a peer group, and you do all of these things, and the hope is that it manifests itself in terms of business success and business performance. And there's this frustration that sets in when you've been doing all the right things for an extended period of time, and you feel like you're just not catching the break. And
we just need a break. It's exactly right.
And that's what makes this current period so frustrating, because I really felt like Q1 was so strong and we had so much momentum, and and it's been a little slow for May, and we've given back some of the growth that we gained in Q1. And and I've been coaching, like the coaching I'm giving people, because there was another founder who's like, if we don't raise money if we don't get a term sheet by the middle of June, we're firing the entire company. And not shutting down the company, but it's going to be me and my co-founder, and we're going to run the business. And I feel like the coaching I give people is very similar to that concept of, instead of being afraid of what might happen if you fail, it's just pursuing that thought process and figuring, okay, what's my plan when this happens? Obviously, it's not ideal, but even for another founder friend of mine who is really struggling and thinking about shutting down their business, sometimes you just have this fear of like, what if, and I'm a failure. And it's more, okay, what are some 3 paths that we can pick as ideas? One of them could be shutting down the company. Another could be pivoting into some kind of professional services. Another could be, hey, you find the product market innovation and you exploit it and it grows. But having the ability to visualize that without all of the anxiety, I think helps a lot, because I think mental health is a big deal right now. And I think it's particularly a big deal given all the uncertainty and the fluctuations in the market. It creates so much volatility for operators to navigate. I was talking to another, obviously I had a lot of conversations recently. I was talking to another operating executive of a major company that we all know, but that company, the category that they're in is under attack for a lot of different reasons. And this person is the CMO of a multi-$100 million business, and I could hear the anxiety in their voice of saying, I'm not selling to this person now, I'm selling to that person. And anyway.
Well, I mean, this is all very real. And this same person I was talking to yesterday said the exact same thing of like, man, Q1 just felt like, okay, we're back on this track. things are going to go well, this is going to be great, and then you just get brought back down. And yes, founders are very resilient, but we all have our limits. We all have like this risk reward that we do, it's in service of that. But look, at the end of the day, I mean, I have two parents that have been sick over the last year. My father's not doing well. I have three kids where I coach two of their teams, flag football and basketball, and I love doing those things, but I don't feel like I have stability and focus. So like it's at the cost of being able to spend time with my parents or my dad. And like, I'm not trying to have anyone feel sorry for me. It's just ultimately like from a mental health standpoint, we are like still playing from behind and trying to catch up and get on top of it. We all have our own personal lives that we like want to make sure our families are not just well taken care of, they have the support and love from us. And it becomes so difficult to do that when you're constantly feeling like you're being told you're not good enough or you don't have enough value to what you're doing, and your employees are unhappy and sales aren't exactly where they need to be. It can be really, really frustrating. And so I don't have an answer here. I just think that's like good to recognize and stop and pause and understand that it's
Question
tough.
for you, AJ. Does it, like, when you understand, when you put yourself in the other person's shoes and you look at the world from their perspective and you say, and I'm not talking about any particular investors, but more investors in general, they've got their businesses, their incentive models, and certain things affect them greatly. So when I've noticed that when this volatility came, investors were very quick to start cutting costs in some organizations almost before you had real signals. Like it was like preempted cuts. And in some cases, there were deep cuts that are now hurting these organizations because things didn't work out as badly as we thought. But then you think about those investors and you realize most of them haven't returned capital in some time to the LPs. There's a lot of pressure there. They're struggling to raise funds. Their previous funds aren't performing well. This market volatility extended the liquidity, extended their path to liquidity that they were hoping was going to be 2025. Now it might be 26, 27. You look at all these pressures that they're dealing with, and you say, okay, a lot of these opinions and these things that they're saying are coming from this background. And so I'm going to discount it. I'm not going to like take it as seriously and let it affect me as much because I know that this person is just eating shit for the last bit and this is a really tough moment for them. Does that come into play?
I mean, venture has been operating like PE for the last 5 years. And I think that that's an area.
I don't know if you can say that.
I
How
mean,
can you say that?
what's profitable and efficient growth?
Yeah,
Is there any venture?
Practice it.
I mean, sure. At the AI level, like OpenAI spending $125 billion last year on 12 billion in revenue. Like, okay, that's a venture funded business for sure. But I think that there's definitely in these bigger funds, I know this, I have friends, my company and bigger funds that definitely have a lot of downward pressure on keeping cost, especially because what's the thing that we're all trying to do right now? Revenue protection. And when you're in revenue protection mode, what are you not investing in? Growth at all costs. Because ultimately you're being told fairly, like if you don't have your revenue figured out, you're keeping your revenue protection, GRR figured out, you don't have product market fit. If you don't have product market fit, you have a leaky bucket. If you have a leaky bucket, then you're just pouring money in at the top and it's coming out. So don't spend money at the top of the funnel. Well, okay, so it's not a PE playbook per se, but that is how I think it feels.
Yeah. It is. It's kind of what Lemkin had said a while ago, which is it's going to be this bifurcated world where you're going to have this one segment of the market that feels like ZERP, which it does. Like if you look at the AI space.
Owner, I mean, they just raised, right?
120 million.
Legitimately killing it, right? Like this company is growing like a weed, is super efficient. This is the creme de la creme of the market. But you're noticing some companies raising at 125 times revenue. And those are these AI companies that have a bit of shine on them. At the same time, you do see this other side of the same ecosystem where the experience is very, very different. For those founders, Sam, that are coming to you and are feeling all of this pressure, Should a lot of them just walk away from what they were doing? Like, this is a product market fit thing. If you don't have it, like, you're better off sunsetting a business and coming back and fighting again, trying something new and different, rather than, I find that sometimes people spend too much time tinkering on a bad idea. And you have great people, talented people, earnestly working like at something that you just can't see it become a thing. For them, should they just, like, a lot of them be walking away, and they're not? They're pot committed.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very hard to build a company, and you raise money and you make promises to people and you have a point of view by definition, because you know the odds when you start that you are in the minority, but you don't want to believe it. And you get to a certain point, and it's pot committed is exactly the right way to put it, which is that you've been doing this for a certain amount of time. You feel like, how can I go back to zero? Like, how can I start again? How can I just say it's over? Like, I can't do that. And that is exactly, and by the way, that doesn't, well, it's really not my place to tell somebody that. What I try to do is, first of all, in the back of my head, what I'm thinking, because I have had a number of these conversations, and this isn't me, like on LinkedIn. I was on the phone this is true. I have had these conversations. And what I'm thinking in my head is this is the binary nature of venture. Like, this is the market. If they figure out how to raise money, they deserve it. And if they don't, they don't. And that's, we're in the hockey playoffs, and that's how it works. Sometimes the puck goes in and sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes you have 10 scoring chances and you can't put it in, and they get one shot and they put it in.
And they sometimes forget that they're shinier to investors as somebody who's failed once quickly and has taken the L and is coming back to build something new. You will raise another round. Like, people like that first failure and comeback moment, but then they spend 3 years on that failure. And then if you go back and raise, there's less of a shine, because it's like, you spent 3 years tinkering on that. You knew it wouldn't work. Why were you doing it?
I think, well, that thought process is problematic only because the point that I try to impress upon people is, first of all, like, let's take the emotion out of it and let's plot out specific paths and let's figure out exactly what you're going to do. And when you do that, things tend to feel a little bit less scary. And so I did that myself 2 years ago. It was the summer of 2023. And I've said this story many times. I got back from my guys' weekend and I was looking at the balance sheet, and, my good friend Abdul, the now departed head of finance at Pavilion, had paid, $500,000 worth of bills all in the last week or so. And our balance sheet was in peril. And I thought to myself, this might go out of business. Like, this is true. If I don't do something, Pavilion will go out of business. And I thought to myself, I cannot let that happen. And I had been fighting my board to make deeper cuts than the cuts that we'd made that previous March. And I looked at the P&L and I said,
meaning that you wanted to make deeper cuts, and
they wanted me to make. I said, this is the bare bones. This is it. And one of the bare bones was eight people in product and engineering that were taking me for a massive ride that didn't do any work, and that were pushing bullshit code and it was just garbage. It was just absolutely crap work product. I'm sorry, they don't listen to this podcast, so they won't hear it. But that is true. It was not good. And it's on me for hiring them in the first place and allocating the capital that way. And I looked at it and I said, this is not bare bones. I said, Sam, you built this with you and Andrew Seam. Like, you can run this by yourself if you need to. I am not letting this company go out of business. And so that was the moment. And then I had this other thought exercise of, okay, Pavilion goes out of business. Why is that great for me? Why is that great? What can I do then that I can't do now? And how do I change that? But it's really thinking it through so that you can walk through these doors that you're so terrified of what's on the other side. You can mentally walk through them. And that's what I try to get people to say. Okay, maybe one path is you shut it down. What happens after that? You still own the code. You still have a product. You can still do something with it. What happens after that? And I find that that's one of the ways, but it doesn't make it good. It's not like, oh, that's great. Like, it's still more fun to be in 2020 and 2021. It's still more fun to be growing 100% or 200%. And the reality is that the three of us, but especially me and AJ, like, we want we've had hard lessons already, like we want to be able to say, listen, young whippersnapper, young grasshopper, I've had the hard lessons and now it all worked out for me. And I step into, sit on my knee and I will read you this bedtime story and you can persevere too. But when we are still the ones persevering, everybody wants the lesson to be in the past and we want the lesson to be over. And it's really annoying when it's not over, when you're like, I got to do it too. I got to sit here and freaking meditate and find my zen for how long, for how long? And the answer is, we don't know how long. For as long.
Oh man, Sam, I am now a solid 6.8, feeling a solid 6.8 after that talk. Thank you, my friend.
I think this is the steady state now. Like, it's something I've really convinced myself on, is that this is it. Because I was talking to Jamie, who ran STA for the first bit before I took over. And he was like, you've dealt with more volatility since you've taken over than the rest of the entire history. And the business has been around for about 18 years, 19 years. And he's like, I saw maybe blips here and there, but this has been just this crazy 5-year run. And when I look out into the future, I don't see a lot of reasons to believe that it's going to go away. So I think there's a part of what we all need to do is come to terms with the fact that this is kind of the game now, and it's going to feel a little bit choppy and it's going to be tough. And it might not be as fun, but it will be probably more fulfilling, because when we all talk amongst each other, the moments that we kind of remember are a really good result in a really tough moment. Like, that type of thing does feel quite fulfilling. Like, I feel quite fulfilled about how we've done in the worst of moments. And I rarely remember the true feeling of our biggest wins and good moments.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, this is the work. What's the path? The path is, it's the Garden of Gethsemane. It's like, you cannot want it to be over. Wanting it to be over will make it further away. It will be over when you don't want it to be over. That is when it will happen. And I know that sounds woo-woo and new agey, but I really do mean that. You need to be present and mindful and find your joy now. And whatever way you need to do that, but you need to do that, because desperately hoping, if we don't get a term sheet by June, what'll I do? You're not getting the term sheet. I'm telling you, you're not getting the term sheet.
You're thinking like that, you're probably not going to get that term sheet.
Yeah, you have to be, I am the person that has term sheets sent to them. Of course I am. I'll have any meeting. Everything's going to be fine. And by the way, if I need to shut down the business, then I shut down the business and I build something new. And it's a wonderful journey, and God is watching. And over the course of 80 years or 100 years or however long we're on this planet, it'll all be part of my wonderful story, and I'm grateful for it. And that sounds like BS, but I'm telling you, if you're out there listening, it is the truth. That is how you must approach it.
The advice I've been giving anyone that's thinking of raising a seed, and would give anyone raising a seed now, is think of it as like 3 at-bats. You raise your seed round, you have 3 at-bats, meaning that you have your first idea, you're going to try it. If it doesn't work, you try one more thing and one more thing. Money is done. At that point, don't try to bridge it. Don't try to raise some term sheet on horrible terms. Kill the business, start again. Go get a new co-founder, new team, new idea, new energy. This is about at-bats to find the magic. And if you haven't found it in those 3 at-bats, it's probably the wrong space, wrong idea, wrong team. It's not going to get a lot better when you raise a bridge, or maybe the bridge is okay, but that second term sheet that they raise on horrible terms, that's not going to become a generational company. That wasn't the dream that this person set out for. Don't do that. Kill it and move on.
Are you a B2B tech, CRO, VP of Sales, or VP of Revenue Operations? Join over 200 of your peers at CRO Summit 2025, a one-day executive-only event designed to help you tackle the challenges of today and position you for growth tomorrow. Hosted at the Denver Art Museum, this summit combines cutting-edge insights and actionable strategies. Learn from industry pioneers covering all aspects of sales and revenue growth into 2026, with sessions from Andrea Kayal of Help Scout, Guy Rubin of Ebsta, Wendy Sturgis of Cleverbridge, and more. Visit joinpavilion.com/CRO-summit to secure your spot today.
I think people that play a lot of poker, they feel like this naturally, because you try to see as many flops as you can. So you pay that. If you don't have to pay too much to see the first flop, you try to get in as many times to see, do I have something yet? And if you don't, you fold, you move on. And I think people get too committed to the idea, and it's not working. You do need to step away. And that's part of the skill that any, I think, great entrepreneur has to have now. You might not have needed it before, but now this is a critical skill set.
I agree. And I think the last thing I would say is it's not a failure. Like, you learned so much. You learned so much about yourself, about how to build a business, about what works. I was thinking about this myself because Pavilion, the business, it has some structural flaws that I've introduced over the last couple of years. I made it flawed, and I'm annoyed. I'm really annoyed. And I think to myself, but I'm in a privileged position. Why? Because I think to myself, I wish one part of me wants to sell this thing and just start over with all of the lessons that I've learned running it, but just this time don't screw it up. And then I get to the realization that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm doing that
right now. I have the same thing.
Pavilion Gold is that thing.
But there's a difference. You have real revenue. So in your worst of moments, you looked at your revenue, you're like, this is like 8 figures of revenue, right? That's a little bit different.
100 million. So what is that? 9 figures?
I think it's when you see that type of
3,000% year over year.
Day over day. It was day over day.
When you see that type of revenue, you have optionality. You're like, I can cut the cost. I can do this. Like, there's another business that AJ and I were discussing last week that in 7 years is at like 2-point-something million, has been flat, is losing money. Like, that's the type of stuff where just you should have gotten out 5 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I mean, especially if you're like trying to just continually find product market fit, because what happens is you pivot and then you kind of have to start over, and then you have like weird sub parts of customers that are on this technology and this technology, and you can't communicate a value prop in a very clear way and what you're doing overall. Sam, it's so funny when you say this, because on my runs, this is my strategy. Thinking I'm reading the book The Advantage, Patrick Lencioni, which is great. But it talks about ownership. I love the idea of just at the end of the day, it stops with the three of us. Like, our businesses are our business. If it fails, it's our fault. No one else owns that. We own that. And the part of it, I was just thinking about this. I'm like, man, I've learned so much. I could do this with a blank slate. And I'm like, wait a second. I am doing this right now with a blank slate. Like, literally, I have a real business in front of me with 1,000 customers. And yes, we have real problems and real challenges, but it's on me to be able to fix that, meaning that I am accountable to the management team if they have teams that aren't performing, and it is on me to literally go in and say, like, honestly, this part of it isn't cutting it. We have to make changes now. And so I've had issues, and I was talking to these 7th graders, and they asked a really interesting question. They asked, what type of leader am I? I was like, for 7th grader, that's a pretty good question.
That's a great question.
That's a great question.
Did you tell them what we discussed last week, that that's not an answerable question?
We didn't discuss it. You asserted.
You came up.
Style are stupid. And
yeah.
Nobody can agree with you. I completely disagree with you. All those people that write down, here's how to work with me, they're all losers.
Yeah.
I have that document about me, you jerk.
So I played them the latest episode of Top Line. No, I said, look, and this is true. I think this was a helpful lesson. I said I was a redheaded small kid in middle school, and I was bullied in middle school, and I learned a lot of lessons growing up through that, and resiliency, but mostly in compassion and empathy. And I like to think of myself as a compassionate leader. And you don't hear about compassionate leaders. Compassionate leaders don't make the news. Unfortunately, the ones that are doing things that feel like they're just like making changes where they're coming in strong armed, that's what makes the news. That's what sells. But at the end of the day, I look at around me of all of the employees, people that I've worked with that have gone on to build their own companies, that I've invested in, that have become VP of sales and CROs. That's what makes me most proud and happy to do that. Now, the challenge with that is, and this goes back to what we were just talking about, how do you do that in a world where headcount isn't growing the same rate that it is? Revenue might not be growing the same rate. We're all working remotely. We lose that human connection a little bit. And we're sitting here just thinking about and frustrated with some of the challenges that we're going through as a business. Or you feel it?
Oh my
you see
God,
that?
it's just the exact is that thing that you did. Watch it on YouTube, everybody. That is in my
I
head.
talk to myself a lot when I run. I like talk to myself. My wife will like take candid videos of me just walking out of a room and just like talking to myself. And she's like, "What are you doing?"
I think
like,
talking to yourself is extremely. I'm not. This is not a joke. I think it's extremely productive and helpful. Speaking
100%.
it out loud, because you think this is random, not a viral moment. Hashtag if you're sniffing. You think that you think in sentences. You do not think in sentences. You think in images and flashes and impressions. And when you actually talk, it helps you articulate something that sometimes is not articulated inside you.
Yeah, well, this is actually in something that's tied to aviation. When you are doing a check, or you're like doing a pre-check or checking off things, a checklist, you say it out loud and you actually read it to make sure you say it. But same thing. I mean, I've always been doing this. I just like talk out loud to myself. But yes, so here we are.
So to tie a bow on this section, we feel like this. Okay, so there's some companies that are struggling and have been struggling for some time, and they have tough decisions to make. And there's that part of the ecosystem. We feel more positive about the market ourselves based on what we're seeing and reading and how businesses are doing. AJ, do you feel like Q2 and then the rest of this year will be closer to what your original thoughts were around what's possible in and around that space, or greatly different?
I don't know, Asad. I don't know, and I think that that's what's giving me that frustration around 6.2. I'm super optimistic as a person, but I had an advisor, investor, friend tell me recently that I couldn't have a certain conversation with specific people because I'm too optimistic, and that was like pretty frustrating to hear.
You're too optimistic?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
So I would oversell a situation in a way that might not get an outcome or a result that was desired through
I think
this.
that's good quality for a founder, is to be too optimistic.
I mean, I would hope as investors that like your goal is to invest in only founders that are optimistic. If you're
like you kind of have to be blindly optimistic. This is good. Like we got this.
I think they go like that's just a frustrating statement to hear in this time right now, because like, what am I supposed to do with that? Become less optimistic? Like what?
No, you're not supposed to do that at all. You're just supposed to
Listen,
acknowledge it.
Would you take career advice from somebody who's just been fired?
No.
Would you take sports advice from a coach who just lost the league?
No.
So then why would you take advice from people who are saying silly things or they're struggling in their businesses?
I don't, but I'm a human being. And so when I take feedback very seriously. And
but you shouldn't take it blindly seriously. That's probably your flaw, is you think all feedback is a gift. It's not. Like feedback from the right person is a gift. Feedback from the wrong person is annoying.
I'm having flashbacks to last week's episode.
Asad's stature in our ecosystem grow is a blessing and a curse, because he's very smart and insightful, but the strength of his conviction is unbounded. He's like, this is the real problem. Let me tell you your real problem, AJ.
You should remain optimistic, AJ. That's the best AJ out there.
I agree.
I appreciate that.
Sam, you feel that the rest of this year, how is it going to go for you based on what you see today?
What I think is that we're doing all the right things, and I think that there's an opportunity for what we're doing, because in a world of volatility, you need information. You need to know how other people are solving these difficult problems. And I think it's an execution challenge for us. I don't think it's a strategy. The fundamental thesis of Pavilion is as sound as ever, which is that everybody's job is changing all the time. How are you going to figure out how to do your job? And how are you going to create some level of stability in your life as an operating executive? That is more true than it was when we started it. And the problem is problems of our own creation. And I think we can execute. Now, will we get the tailwind? I think, as someone who I dearly loved used to say, sometimes a tailwind is the absence of a headwind. And so do I think that we'll be getting a big boost? I'm not sure. Do I think there's growth opportunity? Yes. Do I think I have to go and grab it with vigor and enthusiasm? And, you talk about building a craft business, Asad, and that's a word that I've employed recently. I want Pavilion to be thought of as we are the world's leading community craftspeople. We know how to build community at scale, integrating digital experiences and in-person experiences. And I don't think we're there yet, but I think all of the pieces are in place, and I am prepared to spend portions of my balance sheet to get there. So I'm going to lean in. We just hired a fractional CRO, as you know, Asad. We are making more hires and more investments. Does that mean we're executing perfectly? No, but I want to build something great and big, and we're not done yet. That's how I feel.
Very good. I love
Asad,
that.
I mean, one quick question on this for you, because I just be curious. Sam and I have similar business model types, we'll call it. Well, different. We all have different, but yours is definitely the most different of the three of us. I mean, how does all of this, and I feel like your situation is like really market dependent. It's 100% driven by the market. How does all of this, what's going on, feel for your
It's
business?
been interesting. Q1 was really good. We were doing about $1 million a quarter, $1 million a month in the first 3 months of the year. We had 1.9 million for Q2 right now. And so we're doing pretty good. We haven't seen any drop off.
It's funny because you're doing better in Q2 than you were in Q1.
That's what's interesting. We haven't seen any drop off in projects. So we work on a couple of hundred live projects at any given moment. Not one has been put on hold. We have seen a moderate impact on top of the funnel. But the net pipeline that we're working on, the net book of projects we're working on, is one of the highest we've had in the last 5 years. And so the book is strong, but the add-on to it is not at the same velocity as we had in Q4 and early Q1. So the market has impacted us to some extent, but there's still, like, we just literally before coming on to this, they closed the largest deal in our history, and we just signed on a 20-role project with a really large fintech company, like a multi-billion-dollar publicly traded one. So there's still movement happening. There's still some front foot action happening, which is fun to see. I feel pretty positive about the rest of the year. Like, I do think that I've given it a discount in my head based on what I thought was possible in January and February. I have to, based on the top of the funnel velocity coming down, but I feel pretty positive about us in this market, what's possible, where things are going, because I believe that the volatility actually hadn't affected technology companies practically yet. They'd affected them at the board levels, but the software companies were not necessarily underperforming massively because of it. Some missed a little bit, some were just fine. And there are pockets of this ecosystem that are doing really, really well. Like, we have some of these AI companies that we work with, they're flying, dude. Like, they're just flying. Like, it's the type of product market fit that I've never seen before in my life. I didn't think it was possible. And
I mean, I think that's why last week you were arguing so much with Guy on some of these points, because you are seeing at the top of the top, which is awesome. You're just seeing a different point of view on the market and what's working. And, you know, some of Guy's data was probably the bottom of the market in terms of companies. I don't know, but I'd have to assume some of the customers.
I also just philosophically believe this thing. Like, listen, this is my craft. My craft is that helping companies build teams. And the reason I think it's a worthy pursuit is because I think it's really hard to get this right. And I believe it's going to get harder and harder. Like that, I truly believe this. And so I'm willing to change my mind, but kind of pointed my life in this direction. If I thought there's just 1 million A+ players out there and anyone can build these teams, anyone can perform that, like, then I wouldn't do this thing. Like, then what's my value in the world? And so I truly believe this. And so I'll debate everyone till they change my mind.
I think it's quite, this is why I'm excited to work on making Top Line bigger with the two of you, because listen, AJ, if an executive search firm, it's like starting a restaurant, like, we've talked about this. Does the world need another restaurant? Does the world need another RevOps consulting firm? Does the world need another headhunter? What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. This is why central planning doesn't work. Does the world need an expert at building great teams to help companies organize themselves for growth? I guess it does. And we've got ourselves a good execution-minded person on this Top Line team in the form of Asad Zaman. We're lucky, and we're going to make Top Line the biggest media property in the history of go-to-market.
Let's go. Of tech. We're going for tech. There we go. It's going to be exciting. Okay, let's talk a little bit we've been talking about seed round companies a little bit. So let's actually click into Peter Walker's data. he had something fascinating about the location and the impact on valuation of where you are based. And what he found was that essentially companies in the Bay Area, in Austin, Bay Area, Seattle, and New York were commanding a premium, but the Bay Area had a pretty significant premium in terms of valuation. And I'm sure there's also an impact on the ease to raise those rounds in addition to the valuations they're getting. Clicking into some of the stuff we're seeing, I've noticed a huge shift where all these early stage companies that we're working with, these AI first companies, most of them are in offices, minimum 5 days a week, working their asses off in office. That's the expectation of everyone they're hiring. And we're seeing a concentration in San Francisco, concentration in New York. Even the companies, we work with a lot of companies in Israel, and we bring them over to the US, and they're picking one of these two locations, usually New York because of the time difference. But this distributed thing isn't as much. You don't see as many of these exciting startups from other locations the way you would before. And so my question is, AJ, do you think that now, in this moment in time, if you're a founder and you have an idea and you want to go build this company, it behooves you to go to the Bay Area and try to build over there? And if you're a professional or an executive who's trying to orient your career for a takeoff, that you're better off being in one of these locations than sitting in Phoenix or Denver or one of these other markets that maybe 5 years ago felt fine, but right now you're really not in the right market for velocity?
I mean, the answer is a loaded question. I think like any answer to a really loaded question is it depends.
On what?
Well, on a lot of different things, Asad. It depends on where you are in life with family and kids. It depends on your financial means, fiscal
He's not
means.
asking about any of that. He's just saying, is it better to be in the big market or not? You might have a family and not be able to move, and you're going to lose the opportunity of somebody that doesn't have kids that can move.
Yeah. It doesn't become averaged out for you. You're losing an edge.
Well, look, I would lean yes. Of course, yes. That's the whole point, is that you have this mind share. You're going to meet better people. You're going to meet people that are thinking the same way. That's higher fidelity. You're going to meet investors in that same way. I was on a trip with a guy a couple weeks ago that had started a company in San Francisco and done really, really well. This was 10 years, 15 years ago. And he had accessibility to the best investors and founders. He created a meetup. We had some of the best founders go to that meetup. And he talked a lot about that community and what it afforded him. And I mean, if I was in a different situation and I was single even and was going to start a company, I would be in a big market. I would be in Austin. I would be in San Francisco. I would not be in Philadelphia. So yeah, of course, that's the answer.
And so if that's the answer to that, Sam, would you say then on the other side of the spectrum with professionals and executives that some people should be considering moving to these places more so than before?
Yes.
Right.
He says from Barcelona. No, I've been my fun fact or fun story anecdote. I read this book called Our Share of Night. It's about a death cult, like a group of people that worship the devil, and it takes place, portions of it, in Argentina in the 70s and 80s. Anyway, there's this warlock, this medium that channels the devil, and the cult wants to cultivate his son because his son inherits his powers. And so his son, the warlock, puts the spell over his son so that his son is not visible to the members of the cult. But the son, his whole life, feels this pull back towards this death cult. He can't explain it, but his life is unfulfilled. And he finally ends up on the doorstep of, their country resort where they sacrifice people and where they summon the devil, even though it was not sort of front and center for him, but it was this subconscious pull. And that is how I feel about New York City. I just feel like I'm going to end up.
I should have
listened to the song New York, New York.
I feel like I'm going to end up back in New York. I mean, not tomorrow, but I just don't see how I can build a big, have the impact that I want from here, is the honest truth.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, Asad, I guess the question from a recruiting standpoint, you're in Canada and you work with a lot of American companies.
Yeah, it affects me 0%. I like to tell myself, and I'm probably wrong. I think we're in this business where most of the problems we solve have this extreme urgency with them that in person is not necessarily required in the sales process the same way. So we closed a $750,000 deal in Q4 with a $30 billion business. Between the first outreach from them to me to signing off with procurement was about 10 days. And that's a huge deal running through a process of a company that, procurement is procurement everywhere. It's not like their procurement is 100 times faster, but the deal gets through because there's this extreme urgency from the board level to the C levels that are pushing this forward. So I don't find the need from a sales process perspective. I also don't find it from a headhunting perspective because candidates, recruiters like to tell themselves that their networks matter because back in the day, there was no centralized database. And so if I went to Sam and I was trying to get Sam as a customer, the biggest value proposition I could have is that I have a database of 100,000 salespeople. You want to hire salespeople, you need to work with me. LinkedIn changed that the way the Yellow Pages changed the database situation for salespeople. Before you would go around, trying to find businesses, and then the Yellow Pages turned up. You're like, oh, I can just flip pages and call these companies. This is wild. And so LinkedIn was that for recruitment. And now that it's centrally available, I think candidates operate out of self-interest. I don't think anyone who doesn't want a new job in that moment in time is going to take it because Bobby, their friend, asked them to. And I don't think anyone that's interested in a next step is going to only talk to Bobby, their friend, about next steps. They don't look at anything that seems interesting. Where I do think it matters is like this grander partnership development, ecosystem penetration type of thing. It was in Nashville where I met AJ Gandhi. By chance, he walked into my session. We got to know each other. Marlon is a great partner of ours now, and AJ has been a massive partner. He's introduced us to so many other firms. I wouldn't have met him if I hadn't made my way out to Nashville. And so I think that's where the value is. And I need to do a much better job at being in more of these places because I've seen the value of doing so.
That was GTM 2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Look at that. Never know where you're going to meet someone.
That was... And I'm not a networker. I wanted to actually know going there. I wanted to meet him because I'd heard great things from you guys about him, from Sam specifically. And it worked. And that was worth it. Massively worth it. Okay. Last quick topic. I don't know if this is a quick topic, but we'll try to make it a quick topic. We keep hearing people saying that M&A is dead. But then in the last few weeks, maybe in the last couple of months, there's been a ton of M&A. Wiz, Google, $32 billion. That was a month or so ago. DoorDash made 2 acquisitions last week for $5 billion. Codium / Windsurf acquired by OpenAI for $3 billion. MoveWorks by ServiceNow for $2.8 in March. Coinbase acquired Deribit, is that the word? For $2.9 billion this month. So is it just that M&A is dead for companies that are maybe not doing well, but for the rest of the market, M&A is just fine? Like, what's the takeaway here? There seems to be a ton of M&A.
The advisor that I was speaking with mentioned, he talked a lot about this. He said the doors, he thinks the floodgates are going to open, and the doors are going to open on this, specifically around strategic M&A.
Well, in a way, AJ, here's another data point for you. So in Q1 2025, there were 550 M&A deals involving venture-backed startups globally, up from 435 in Q1 of last year. So it's picked up quite significantly compared to last year. And there is a lot of reason to believe it continues.
What those deals look like compared to their previous rounds. Like, did venture make an IRR that...
Bifurcated world. The DoorDash acquisitions, the last couple of investors in those companies didn't make money because they sold for under their peak valuation. But if you look at Codium made a lot of money.
Yeah. Well, Codium's super interesting. We didn't talk about Codium. They ran the enterprise play to Cursor, which is on the, they're actually, fun fact about Codium, I know quite a few people, former Trendkiters, they worked out of the Trendkite office in Austin. And I know someone that has worked for the last 4 companies, Trendkite being one of them, in that same office, including Codium.
Really?
Yeah, literally. Yeah, I went to Pluralsight.
Does he just hang out there? He's like... if you're making an offer,
But yes, yeah, 100%. She's just like, and keeps ending up back in that office, 820 Brazos Street. So yeah. Anyway,
Sam, what do you have to say about this serendipity of this person finding 4 jobs in the same office in a greater city? Forget the M&A stuff. What's going on here? This is very interesting.
I have nothing to say about it. I strongly agree that the animal spirits are wedded, and that people want to do M&A in the same way I want to grow. And I think all we need is a few quarters. What we need is Trump not to screw anything up and just leave things alone and push some additional deregulation, a few tax cuts. We're off to the races.
I think inflation came in as a very good reading for inflation. The market has gained about $1 trillion in the last 2 days. We were recording on Tuesday. Yesterday was massive. Today is doing well. I think these deals are getting announced, so it's quite clear what the purpose for this whole tariff situation was. It wasn't to bring jobs back or create a new revenue stream to reduce income taxes. It was to create trade deals. And it feels like there's some rationality in them that they want to get this stuff done and win the midterms, and that creates a bit of a timeline on all of this. And so I feel pretty positive about the direction of all of this.
Yeah, good. Okay.
Oh, yeah. That's it then.
We didn't talk about the hot take where VCs are going to be left ruling the world.
We didn't have time for that one.
We didn't have time. So one question. Here's the question. What's one great thing that's happened to you professionally in the last 2 weeks?
We're going to have a moment of silence while we think of our answers here.
Sam, why don't you start with that?
Why don't I start? Well, there's some fun things happening. Here's something. We looked at some retention data. This is why I'm excited about. This is why it's an execution problem. And we created these things that are our versions of small peer groups. Chief calls them core groups. YPL calls them forum. We call them cabals. Obviously, we know about these. And of the 15 CEOs that were in cabals that came up for renewal in the last month and a half, 14 of them renewed. Wow. And that renewal rate for the folks at home is not the same renewal rate that we see in general. So I feel like we can scale cabals. We're definitely going to scale them for Pavilion Gold, and we're going to figure out a way to do them perhaps at a higher price point than the regular executive membership. But I just feel like small peer groups are going to be a core part of what Pavilion is centered around. And I'm really excited for that.
That's very cool.
The missing piece of the membership. It's the thing I would renew for.
I love that.
I have a small but mighty win, and I'll go quickly here. We changed how we were surfacing the work that the product and engineering team is doing on a weekly basis, and making it just much more visible and how it affects customer accounts. And I've gotten very, very good feedback on that. So it was just a small change that we did, and small changes can make massive differences in how we communicate. So I'll take that as a win in the last 2 weeks.
That is a win. Awesome. You closed your biggest deal ever. How can that not be the win?
Oh, yes, that happened too. That happened. Yes.
What was he going to say?
And the team broke that record in December of last year, and then broke it again right now. So I'm very proud of them. The win that came to mind is actually we're going through a rebrand. We went through a pretty rigorous process to find the partner. We ended up working with the same firm that Sam worked with. They're really nice people. We're very excited to work with them. And the process started off maybe a little over a month or so ago. Last week, we had a meeting with them, which was around messaging, like the core message you're trying to get across. And the thing that I found difficult when I was going through these meetings with vendors was I thought technically they're all competent. It's not complicated to build a website. I actually thought design-wise, a lot of them were pretty good as well. Where I felt most were weak was their appreciation for an ability to be good with copywriting, to get the message right. And these guys just delivered in that meeting, where I came away from that meeting feeling like we will have the most well-branded company in this space. It'll be better than True. It'll be better than Diversa. It'll be better than this and that and the other. And that came out of that meeting. I feel very excited about what's going on there. So that's the one that stands out.
And by the way, Amit is a huge listener of Topline. So hello.
Great guy.
Good job, buddy.
Yeah. Killing it.
All right. This was Topline 109. Great conversation with friends. Give us 5 stars in the iTunes or Spotify store. Watch us, subscribe on YouTube, and tell your friends about Topline. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Topline. New episodes come out every Sunday. If you like what you heard today, subscribe so you never miss an episode, leave a 5-star review, and share it with your friends. Don't forget to join our Topline Slack channel to connect with us and discuss the topics we cover with other listeners. Click the link in the show notes. Lastly, if you're interested in joining Pavilion, you can learn more about membership at joinpavilion.com/membership. Thanks again for listening.